I wanted to speak about the state of the squad because I think most people would say it has maybe staled a little bit. Now, that is obviously hindsight, 2020, injury crisis, etc. But just at face value, I think most people would agree that's kind of the case. Now, I don't know why, and I don't know if this is even the case, but I think back to when Guardiola arrived in 2016 and the sort of the following years, I think we had maybe 2 or 3 seasons, maybe even more than that, where we lost a key player from the early success era. So, 2012 through to 2015. Zabaleta went, Joe Hart, Yaya Toure, and then obviously latterly Vincent Kompany, Sergio Aguero. Pep didn't hold back and he wasn't afraid to cut some of City's old guard when he felt like it was necessary. My question then, do you think he has become reluctant to cut the players who were his? And by that, I mean Kyle Walker, for example. He signed him. Bernardo Silva, he signed him. He moulded them into the players they are. Kevin De Bruyne wasn't a Guardiola signing, but he basically was by de facto because we all know what was at work when De Bruyne was signed for City. So I wonder, David, do you think Pep Guardiola, and this is a crazy thing to say, and it's on your head, not mine, do you think he has blind loyalty to some of the players that have brought so much success? And if so, I think that's totally understandable. But has maybe 1 or 2 of those players gone past their expiry date?
Good luck, mate.
I think the short answer is yes. But I think there's probably a bit of context around it. I think he always says he likes players that he can trust and rely on, and like players like De Bruyne, Walker, they are reliable at the moment. Maybe not so much, but when you need them over the 6, 7, 8 years he's been there, they have been reliable. The fact that they probably haven't left already is partly down to maybe the board rather than Pep in terms of like Zabaleta, Vincent Kompany. A lot of these guys, they left when their contracts are over. Walker's still got a contract. Kevin De Bruyne negotiated his own contract to some crazy money, and then these players' contracts aren't coming up to an end. So we're needing to try and sell them. And we've seen what's happened in the market every summer. Kyle Walker, we don't want him to go, but we would like him to move on. No one's paying the fee. Bernardo Silva, no one's paying the fee. No one can afford De Bruyne's fee and wages. So is that Pep's fault? Is that the board's fault? Is it a combination of the two? I think some of these players, yes, they probably should have gone. Would they have gone if we'd have actually got some of our major transfer dealings that we wanted, the Declan Rice, Jude Bellingham, some of these players that we've missed out on? Would they have already gone? I don't know the answer to that either, but the signings we have been making of late have almost felt like supporting transfers. And when we got rid of someone like Vincent Kompany, Ruben Diaz came in. I know he wasn't a superstar, but you knew there was a big atmosphere around Ruben Diaz coming in. Aguero leaves, Haaland comes in. The transfers of Doku and Savio and Calvin Phillips, they haven't been that hard-hitting, big players that are coming in to replace these players. So there's probably a big question mark over me in terms of what is going on with the incoming players that maybe the agents are talking about. Pep, well, am I coming to Man City? Is Pep staying? So these players are just, we've had to keep them because we haven't actually been able to bring in the players that we would like to bring in. And then is Pep actually just not committing to this 2-year contract extension that we all sort of would like him to do, to then give the confidence to bring in some new players and get rid of some of the deadwood? Have we been forced into keeping them? I think I said it on a previous pod before that a lot of the players at Man City end up getting stuck at City. And that's because of maybe that players incoming, that they're not convinced that Pep's going to be there.
City's own success in a way, I guess, because what I've found so often with City, and even going back to that original era of, when after the takeover, the success, City's trajectory matched so many players' careers. For example, Aguero, every time it looked like Sergio Aguero might be on the move, City would go up another level. Pep Guardiola would arrive. They would go and win a Premier League title. They'd be suddenly challenging for the Champions League. They'd be reaching the semi-finals of the Champions League. You get the point. Joe, I I do agree, with David, there are more factors, there are more moving parts here. And I'm not saying for a second that City at this moment in time should be without Kevin De Bruyne, Kyle Walker, Bernardo Silva. They all should have gone. I think that's kind of the core in terms of the players, maybe one or two missing. You could throw Edison in there, but I think it'd be objectively worse if Edison was taken out. He was another player signed. But just one maybe is enough of a fresh legs because Kyle Walker goes, you have to replace him. You need a natural right back in the team. Yes, Akanji can play there. Yes, Rico Lewis can play there, but you need somebody who is sort of born and bred that position, if you like. Bernardo Silva goes, you absolutely have to replace him. And almost you kind of maybe need to replace him twice because you've got the wing option and you've got the midfield option. Kevin De Bruyne, for example, again, high volume creator. We've not kind of seen that from Phil Foden yet. You need to bring in a creator. So it isn't like maybe they would be sitting on their laurels if these players went. I think those sort of top echelon players leaving, they would go out and replace them. I don't know because we saw Kyle Walker get wined and dined by Pep. That's looking increasingly like a bad idea. What was it, 2 years ago? A year ago? Something like that? 30 million was on the table reportedly from Bayern. Dear me. Bernardo Silva, year after year, contract extension. And look, we all say, yeah, we want to keep him. But the weirdest thing is, you go back to that interview with Rio Ferdinand, I think it is, where Pep said you cannot win the same league title over and over again with the same set of players. It kind of feels like he's tried to. Maybe one season too many.
Yeah, I think that's the biggest thing. It's that one season too many where it can become abundantly clear. And I think one thing that we really need to keep talking about, and it's by no means to bash on Pep or anything like that, but a lot of this does come down to Pep's insistence on a small squad. It is Pep who asked for that. It's not the board. The board are actively pushing for signings, and Pep says no. I want to keep the squad the way it is. And again, is that the difference between bringing in a Rodri quote unquote replacement that isn't 34-year-old Ilkay Gundogan on a free? That's your only true summer signing. Is that the difference between bringing in a Kyogo or someone else to at least just alleviate the reliance on Haaland, right? Is that just Pep saying, no, I'm good. We're good. We don't need anybody else. Or do you flip it and say, that's on the board for giving Pep that much power, right? It's that give and take scenario. It feels like
there's a bit of an impasse in that situation, doesn't it? Who's willing to break first?
And I think, and this is Joe Ritchie speaking, not anyone with anyone real knowledge or anything like that, but I think you need to have a breaking point where you're willing to not bloat the squad, nothing like Chelsea or anything like that. But if Pep says, we're good, by bringing in that one or two extra players, yeah, you might have a little bit of frustration within the dressing room, but it's going to start to either these players that are potentially resting on their laurels, it's going to give them that extra energy to want to be the best version of themselves, or it's just going to highlight that, hey, they're not at this level anymore, and either the next winter window or summer window, you move them on, but at least you have those younger players or new signings in there to get you through the tough moments
like
that we're
Stefan
seeing right
Ortega.
now.
Because I genuinely believe Stefan Ortega's extended Edison's career 2-3 years, because there were grievances, even though we all said he was the best man for the job. There absolutely were problems that you could sort of point towards, but Stefan Ortega comes in, he steps up a level. Edison wants to get better. He's suddenly got someone taking minutes off him in matches that mean a little bit more than they did just a random cup game.
Right. Or even João Cancelo, right? Rico comes through, and it becomes clear that he doesn't want to have the fight. Okay, so now you know that, and I'm not saying everyone's going to react like João did, but at least you knew, and at least you could move on from him. Yes, it took a little longer than you wanted, but sometimes you need those difficult situations to say, maybe Kyle Walker's not up to scruff. Maybe Ilkay Gundogan's not up to scruff. Maybe Kev's past it. And I'm just using some of the older names as examples, but it just feels like City, and I'll say City as a whole, Pep and the board have probably been a little bit too safe the last 18 months. And again, it finally caught up to them. I think it can positively change in a window or two, but at this point it does feel like it's a bit of staleness and a bit of age that's really just caught up to the squad as a whole.
Some of them players have actually asked to leave as well. Like a lot of those players, Walker's tried to leave, Bernardo's tried to leave, Edison's tried to leave, Gundogan has left. It's like, if City say that when you want to leave, go. They've tried openly so many times to leave and publicly do it. What does that do to the dressing room, saying you've got 4 players there, or Kev if he wants to leave as well, and Grealish if you believe what you read? 6 or 7 players want to leave. It's not good for the harmony within the squad, is it? That all of them want to jump ship now. It's like they need to move on.
Success of good players.
All the more, yeah, it makes the success all the more remarkable because look, you might not believe everything you read, and I think that's in some cases fair, but I am telling people there have been scenarios in this 4P. There's been scenarios during Pep Guardiola's tenure where big name players have wanted to go and haven't gone, but still provided the goods. It is a weird paradox that we find ourselves in. David, before we get out of here, because obviously we have been going a little bit longer than usual, which is understandable, but is this a rut? Do we get to Spurs 5:30 Saturday? Well, not this Saturday, of course, thank God. A week on Saturday. Do we get to that game and suddenly City turn it on, 1 or 2 players return from injury? Or do you think the issues with the performance are more systemic and more, fatal in terms of a title success?
I'm hopeful we turn it around, obviously, like most City fans are. And I think it was 2 years ago when City played Spurs and we were losing at half time and Mahrez brought it back for us. And it was a bit of a catalyst to turn things around. And Spurs is a difficult game for City fans to enjoy because we tend to do terribly against them. But I'm hopeful. I think if we were to struggle and not get a win again, I know it's not a must win as such, but if we fail to win, I think then we can probably safely say this is a major problem, and let's try and get to January as quick as possible. But on the flip side, I'm hopeful we have a bit more concrete news about what Pep's plan is by the time that Spurs game comes round, and maybe that's the 115 charge when Pep put his flag in the sand again and turned us round a couple of years ago, and Pep signed a new contract, and everyone's like, right, let's start fighting for Pep again. Or Pep says, look, I'm off, and then everyone turns it around and goes, let's do one more big push for Pep. Hopefully it's one of the two. I don't know what would
be worse. I don't know which one I'd prefer least. Pep Guardiola saying he's off, or the 115. It feels, Joe, doesn't it? And I know you feel free to sort of respond to what David just said, but also at the same time, it does feel like there are 2 very dark clouds over City at the moment, 115 and Guardiola. And until we know the outcome of at least one, it also leeches onto this, which I think makes this whole thing trying to understand what's going bad at City at the moment all that little bit more difficult. But anyway, Spurs. Speaking of happy outcomes, dear me.
Well, at least, hey, on the bright side, guys, Spurs didn't at least just lose to a newly promoted side, so we're good, all good form, good momentum. Nothing that'll come back to
they've
bite
got
us.
nothing to avenge themselves, have they?
Yeah. Nope. I'm going to try to take the optimistic side and say that a week and a half away from just reekiness, whatever you want to call it, helps. And we talked about it a little bit in our group chat. I mean, a lot of the squad is going away on international duty, but there are players that are staying back. And I think a lot of it is older players that kind of form that leadership group as well. So I'm going to try to take the optimistic side and say that when they come back against Spurs, they'll put in a performance. It's just, can they put in the 90 minutes to put Spurs to the sword? Because as we know, Spurs can probably play like crap for 75 minutes and still beat City. So it's a really tricky fixture, but I'm leaning more towards it's a rut that City can get out of. It's just, I don't think that their apex this season will be what we've seen in seasons past. So, say City pull out a victory against Spurs, I think we just need to set expectations at a realistic level and not say that this is the start of a 10-game, 20-game unbeaten streak. That's where I fall right now.
Yeah. Deep breath. I don't know if it's because it's over a week away, but I'm weirdly optimistic about that Spurs game. I think they'll go there, at least at the moment. I think they'll go there and they'll blow away the cobwebs and take advantage of, as we've seen under Ange, a leaky back line. Ask me next Friday and maybe that opinion, well, I'm sure that opinion will change. That was the first part of the show. If you want more, make sure to check the City Ramble wherever you get your podcast from.